presentation also, no?
Yes.
Right, fine. Let's start with whoever the people are there. We'll start the session. Otherwise, it will be unfair by you people who have joined on the dot. Right. Today, I'm going to discuss with you another important area in international trade operations, not locally, it's globally. When it comes to international trade operations locally, we have banks to support and other financial institutions to support, right? But when it comes to in large scale, in a country wise and all, there are other organizations who will support and who will monitor and control the international trade transactions globally, right? So there are so many global monetary associations, systems, institutions who are supporting this international trade operations. So we are going to discuss a few of those organizations because it is also in your syllabus, and the latest paper we had about 1 month back. They have questions. There were certain questions regarding this area, right? Now, before we discuss about these organizations, we have to know about a little bit of history, what had happened in the world a few years back, and why we need these organizations, right? And how these organizations have started due to the requirement. We all know the Second World War went on for 6 years. That is from 1939 to 1945. 1945, it was first started by Germans. Hitler led that. Then they were fighting with all the people. One side they were fighting against Americans, the Britishers, right? And also they have fought against Russians, right? So everybody got involved. Only the countries like Italy was supporting Hitler, right? So this went on for 6 years, and then halfway through, Japan also got involved. After Japan got involved, they were hitting the world like hell. I mean, one side, Germans were going, conquering the countries, right, on land. Japanese were hitting by air. You must have heard about Pearl Harbor attack by Japanese, Pearl Harbor attack. And from there, they tried to conquer islands, Philippines, Indonesia, then Malaysia, then came to Singapore, right? And from there, they bombed Sri Lanka also. They bombed Sri Lanka also, right? Another Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday, they bombed Sri Lanka also. I think April 5 then Americans and Britishers, they were thinking hard how to stop these guys, especially Japanese. So what they did was Americans invented the atomic bomb. They invented the atomic bomb, and then they bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki of Japan, the two populated, vastly populated cities, killing lakhs and lakhs of people. Right? Uh, what is this one? You can see the presentation now is covered with this message. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you can see the presentation now?
Yes, we can see the percentage.
Because I can't see. Something happened because this is, they want me to update the, restart the thing. All right, okay, fine. Then, with that, the Second World War came to an end. I'm telling all these things as a story because it is easy for you to understand the background why these organizations have been initiated, right? So when you know the background, without studying anything by heart, you can write the answers, right? So, so in 1945, after the atomic bomb attack, in 1945, the war came to an end. Now, after the war, most of the countries, especially the countries who was involved in the war, they started, they struggled to come out with the damage, right? In most of the countries, the economies were in shambles after the war, right? Once I have heard a story, but I don't know how true it is. They say the German marks, those days it was German marks, the currency was right? There was no value to that currency, right? It was discounted like hell. And they say to buy a loaf of bread, they'll have to take money to the bakery in a wheelbarrow. Just imagine the money in a wheelbarrow. There was no value to the money, right? Likewise, now these people wanted to come up with the damage. They want to repair the damage. Everybody wanted foreign exchange. When it comes to import and export, what is the best way to improve the foreign exchange? What is the best way to improve the foreign exchange? Foreign exchange reserves. What is the best way? What is it? If you do a lot of imports, are you going to save the foreign exchange? If you do a lot of imports, are you going to save the foreign exchange? Right? Yes or no?
No, sir. No.
No. මට no කියලා දැහුනේ. Right. It is no. We have to restrict the imports. We have to restrict the imports. Otherwise, if I import, we have to pay out money. Right? We have to restrict the imports. And we have to improve the
Exports.
We have to improve the exports. The exports only bring money to us. So what every country wanted to restrict their imports as well as to restrict, improve their exports. To restrict the imports without banning like in Sri Lanka, what these people were doing last few months, right? Without banning, what they introduced was they increased the import tariff. They increase the import tariff, right? When the import tariff is more, then you have to pay more money. You have to pay more money for the imports. More money for the imports, right? Because tariff rates are high. Though then obviously, without doing much, imports getting restricted. Import getting restricted. So if every country wants to do this, on the other hand, they want to improve their exports. Right? When you export it, the other country has to buy it. So if those people are behaving like this, then who is going to buy your stuff? Nobody. Right? It's like a vicious cycle. So therefore, we had to stop that. Individually playing their own games, right? So we had to stop that. So while to do that, the countries have to get together and they have to have a dialogue or discussion and to agree on certain tools. Right? This is what had happened in 1945. Right? In 1945, after this war, about 23 countries, they got together, the big guys, right? And they said we had to standardize the import tariff and technical standard requirements with a view to encourage economic growth, rural trade, right? So about 23 countries, they got together and they said, okay, we'll have to do this. Otherwise, we can't survive, right? We have to standardize the tariff, right? So because of that, from 1945, these things were discussed, and in 1948, this institution called GATT, institution called GATT, G-A-T-T. GATT was introduced. Right? It was set up. GATT is General Agreement for Trade and Tariff. General Agreement for Trade and Tariff. General Agreement for Trade and Tariff. Right? This was set up officially set up in 1948, but it was started from 1945. They were discussing how to do the thing. Right? And in GATT, the meetings were called rounds. The GATT meetings were called rounds. Right? The final GATT round, known as Uruguay round, began in 1986 and was successfully completed in 1995. 1985 වලින් 1986 වලින් 1995 වෙනකන් මේ discussion එක ගියා. Right? And in 1995, they said, now the world is acting more favorably. Everybody are in a level playing game, right? So no need to have these restrictions anymore. So because of that, they said, okay, now we'll open the world, right? With a new, we don't want GATT anymore. So we are going to stop the GATT, right? And started a new organization called World Trade Organization, WTO, World Trade Organization, right? So in 1995, World Trade Organization came into existence in place of GATT. In 1947, GATT is drawn to record the results of trade negotiations between 23 countries. I told you, right? Who enters provisionally in force on January 1st, 1948. In 1950, US administration abandoned effort to seek congressional support for the International Trade Organization. In 1945 to 56, 1949 to 1956, the first 4 rounds of tariff negotiations were taken place. Right? It was important in 1957. Now, because people are meeting very frequently. In 1947, the creation of EEC. European Economic Council. Right? EEC. EEC තමයි අපිට ගොඩාක් පාඩ දාන organization එක නේද? European Council එක. මේ දවස්වල ජිනීවා වල එකක් අපිට පාඩ දාන්නේ EEC එක. Right? Then in 1962, derogations to the GATT rules in the areas of cotton and fiber were negotiated. Because the cotton and fiber industry, they were not adhering to these GATT regulations. Right? So later, they sorted it out. And during the GATT period, mainly people were doing bilateral trade agreement. Bilateral. What do you mean by bilateral? What do you mean by bilateral? Give me one example for a bilateral trade agreement. It was signed recently also. Egypt signed Pakistan, Sri Lanka. Before that, there was a bilateral agreement with Singapore. Right? With India, we have lot. With China, we have lot. Right? Now, so GATT was supporting this bilateral trade agreements. But with the diminishing of the GATT, where WTO was set up, right? Instead of bilateral trade agreements, a lot of parties were into multilateral trade agreements. Multilateral trade agreements. Multilateral. So that means more than one party is involved. More than one party is involved in these organizations. Right? Discussions. Multilateral. ඒ වගේම තමයි multi fiber agreement එකේ කියවා පටන් ගන්න. In 1964 to 1967 was Kennedy Round. Kennedy Round. That was headed by Kennedy family. Right? Kennedy Round. John F. Kennedy. During that session, the UNCTAD was created. UNCTAD. Article of the UNCTAD. UNCTAD is created to perform trade measures to favor the developing countries. Right? What questions on the hand? Right. Then came 1973 to 79, Tokyo Round, right? Multi-fiber agreement negotiated in 1974 to restrict export growth, extended several times thereafter. 1986 to 1994, Uruguay round of negotiations. Uruguay round of negotiations. April 15, 1994, the Marrakech Protocol was signed. Marrakech Protocol was signed, establishing the creation of the World Trade Organization. Right? Clear now, Big? Right. World Trade Organization. The Mameke Penlatine, Gartake, the rounds, first round, second round, third round, fourth round. It was a Dylan round, then a Kennedy round. It was a Tokyo round, Uruguay round. Right? And one of the things the GATT introduced was bilateral trade agreements. Gradually, now the people were believing on multilateral trade agreements. Multilateral trade agreements. What do you mean by multilateral trade agreements? More than bilateral trade agreements is more between two parties. Right? Multilateral is
Between more than two parties.
More than two parties. Multilateral
Yes.
is more than two parties. Maybe now, for example, between Sri Lanka and Singapore, it's a bilateral. But within SAARC countries, we have a multilateral. SAARC countries, right? More than two parties. Now, WTO, the WTO began in January 1st, 1995. January 1st, 1995. That was after the GATT was closed down. WTO was initiated. Right? Membership, approximately 162 countries as of November 2015. Right? Okay. Secretariat, 625 staff members, headed by a Director General based in Geneva. Okay. Secretariat is in Geneva, right? Okay. Right. Functions of WTO, administering and implementing the multilateral trade agreements. Right? At present, 16 different multilateral agreements in WTO. Right? Then they are providing a forum for multilateral trade negotiations. They are providing a forum for multilateral trade negotiations. Then dispute settlement between the countries. Right? Then overseeing national trade policy. Another issue. Overseeing the national trade policy. Because these people are now poking their fingers to internal affairs of a country. Okay. That is why they say it's a forum for oversee national trade policies. So even though we say we are a sovereign state, so whatever the trade policies we are preparing, it has to be vetted by WTO. Right? In other words, they are spreading their tentacles to lesser developed countries like us. Right? Okay? That is not a good thing. Then technical assistance and training for developing countries. Technical assistance and training for developing countries. Cooperation with IMF and World Bank. Cooperation with IMF and World Bank. Right? Okay. WTO basic principles is trade without discrimination. Trade without discrimination. So when the bunch of people are there, they don't want to discriminate. Right? Okay. Predictable and growing access to the market. Predictable and growing access to the market. Then undistorted fair competition. Undistorted fair competition. It is like trade without discrimination. Undistorted fair competition. Transparency. Very important. Transparency is very important. Right? And make it D03 exam last paper again. General Agreement Tariff and Trade, General Agreement Tariff and Trade, World Trade Organization introduced 5 key principles. Describe non-discrimination principle in GATT. Right? Non-discrimination principle in GATT WTO. Trade without discrimination. So when we are dealing with the parties, we don't discriminate the nation. Right? America, they will bully the other developing countries. International financial system, we discussed a few more things, right? Now we said in 1945, we started 1945, we started the negotiations to set up IMF, right, and World Bank. Then the IMF, when the discussions were going on, the IMF told the other banks, other countries, their currency values has to be fixed in terms of a quantity of gold they are going to hold. Right? ඒ කියන්නේ මේ අපේ රන් සංචිත ප්‍රමාණය අනුව තමයි currency එක තීරණය වෙන්නේ. රන් සංචිත ප්‍රමාණය අනුව තමයි currency එක තීරණය වෙන්නේ. Right? එතකොට මේක පටන් ගත්තේ ඉස්ලාම අපි තවත් ඉතිහාසය ගත්තොත් තවත් ස්ටෝරි එකක් ගියොත් in 1944 to set up the IMF, right? The few countries got together and then they had long discussions. We call them Bretton Woods discussions, right? Because Bretton Woods is a small town in New Hampshire city in North America. New Hampshire, Bretton Woods is a small town, right? So that is why this is called Bretton Woods system, right? එහෙදි කතා කරලා මේගොල්ලෝ තමයි මේගොල්ලෝ set up කරගත්තේ IMF එක. Initially what they said was any country they have to hold a certain amount of gold. They have to invest in gold. මේ වගේ gold අපි අයින් කළා සල්ලි කළා අද දිලා අරන් තියනවා. So their rates were the exchange rates were fixed according to the gold value. According to the gold value. අපේ රටවලට මේවා හිත කරන්නේ හොඳටම තේරෙනවානේ. ඊට පස්සේ ඔක තිබුණා 1971 විතර එක. ඊට පස්සේ 1973 වලදී introduced a floating exchange rate. Floating exchange rate. Right? එතකන් තිබුණේ fixed exchange rate එකක්. 1973 වලදී floating exchange rate එක introduce වුණා. Right? ඊට කලින් මේක පටන් ගත්තේ the countries like Sri Lanka, UK, Great Britain, then America, වගේ රටවල මේ gold reserves තිබුණා. ඒක තමයි exchange rate එක decide කරේ. මේගොල්ලෝ කිව්වා in 1971 Richard Nixon, then American president, right? Richard Nixon said, I don't want to be in this organization, right? With the people who are doing, if the people are having more and more gold, right? They have the power to rule the world, right? So it is unfair. In 1971, Richard Nixon announced, okay, we are going to get out of this Bretton Woods Accord. Bretton Woods Accord. That means to keep the gold. They said, from now onwards, our money will depend on buying and selling demand to the country, currency. Right? Buying and selling demand to this currency. ඒකට තමයි තීරණය වෙන්නේ කියලා. මේකට අපි කියනවා නික්සන් ෂොක් කියලා. නික්සන් බෝම්බ් එකක් තමයි දැන් මේක පාට. ආන එයා අයින් වුණා. ඊට පස්සේ then all the countries are planning to align with America. Right? So they also started fixing their currencies against the demand and supply to that currency. Hello, I'm sorry. There were some technical issues. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello, can hear you, sir, now.
Okay, sorry. I'm so sorry because all of a sudden my machine packed up and I had to move to another room and to set up the thing. One moment. We were discussing about World Trade Organization. And the floating exchange rates, which was introduced in 1973 onwards. That was due to a decision by the then American President, Richard Nixon, to get out of this Bretton Woods system. Right? Okay. The next, now we have discussed two organizations, that is, one is GATT, then WTO, World Trade Organization. The third one we are going to discuss is International Monetary Fund, IMF, popularly known as IMF. IMF also, it was formed in 1945 as a result of Bretton Woods discussions and commenced operations in March 1947. Right? The other organization running parallel with IMF, that is World Bank. We call it IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, World Bank. They began their operations in June 1946. Right? These both organizations were the outcome of international conference of 44 nations held at Bretton Woods in July 1944 to plan the post-war monetary system. Right? Both were the outcome of international conference of 44 nations. Initially, 44 nations participated at Bretton Woods, and then they were discussing about how to come out with this post-war monetary system. The International Monetary Fund, it was formally formed in 27 December 1945. Headquarters is Washington, D.C., USA, Washington, D.C. Right? Membership, 29 countries, the founding members, and 188 countries as at date. Right? This Washington, D.C. is the capital of USA, and it is popular for these two towers. There were two towers in Washington, D.C. One is IMF, International Monetary Fund. The adjoining tower was World Bank. Adjoining tower was World Bank. Right? உங்கள்ட்ட මොනවද මතක මේ දෙක ගැන? මොනවද මතක මේ towers ගැන? 9/11 attack by Al Qaeda. When they attacked America, they attacked these two towers. We call it twin towers. They attacked these two towers. They know that this is the nucleus of America. Right? So if they hit the financial hub, then the America will collapse. Right? That is why they attacked, in 9/11 attack, they attacked these two twin towers. Right? The benefits of IMF promotes international monetary cooperation and exchange rate stability. Right? Sometimes there may be questions for you to answer, saying that what are the benefits of IMF? IMF promotes the international monetary cooperation and exchange rate stability. Facilitate the balanced growth of international trade. Facilitate the balanced growth of international trade. Provide resources to help members in balance of payment difficulties. Provide resources to help members in balance of payment, their balance of payment difficulties. Right? What do you mean by that? IMF is very popular among our countries. Whenever our government wants to balance their budgets, right? When they want money, first place where they go is IMF. First place where they go is IMF. And then they ask for IMF loans. Balance of payment difficulties will go down to the then IMF. Right? To assist member countries to achieve macroeconomic stability and reduce poverty. That's another benefit. Criticism on things when you, rather than just reading, try to understand it analytically. So then it won't go out from your memory. Right? One of the criticism on IMF is they've been out of touch. They've been out of touch with local economic conditions, cultures, and environments in the countries. They're requiring policy reforms. Right? So they want these countries to have policy reforms. That is one of the criticism. This is very common. This is very common because always what our people are criticizing when we take IMF loans, they started putting so many conditions. They started putting so many conditions controlling our country. Right? So they completely forget about the local economic conditions, our cultures, our environment. Right? They only want their suggestions to be implemented. I'll give you some examples. Okay. If the IMF is supporting us to balance our budget, government budget, right? So they will give money. Okay, you can use this money for the benefit of education system. To restructure the education system in the country, Sri Lanka. You can use this one. Right? But the education system, you can't only right? They said, okay, don't give any free education. You have to charge them. ඒක කරන්න පුළුවන්ද අපිට? අපේ රටවල. බෑ. අපේ රටවල කරන්න බෑ ඒක. We have been used to these things. Right? Sometimes they might support health sector. Health sector support කරන ගමන් කියයි. Right? අපි hospitals ටික ඔක්කොම හදලා දෙන්නම්. Surgical wards සමහරව ඔක්කොම හදලා දෙන්න. හැබැයි you have to charge. In countries like Sri Lanka, if you're going to start charging for free health, then the next day all the trade unions and the people will be on the street. They will be on the street. Right? So, meanwhile, issues. They don't care. What they want is to do this. We have so much of examples I can give you. Right? Another criticism, I can't remember the exact which government, long time back, right? Because of IMF loans, they wanted to introduce the charging of the patients to government hospitals. They make a kelima direct gun නැතුව මේගොල්ලෝ අර මේ මිනිස්සු ගිහිල්ලා රෙජිස්ටර් කරලා නම රෙජිස්ටර් කරලා කාඩ් එකක් ගන්න බෑ. ඒක අරන් යන්නේ ડોක්ටර් ගාවට ડોක්ටර් ඩයග්නොසිස් කාඩ් එක තියාගන්න. You have to fix certain stamps there. Right? ඒ stamp එකක් අලවන්න තමයි යන්න ඕනේ. ඒ stamp එකක් අලවන්න කියන government revenue එක නගිනවා. දැන් බලන්න ඉතින් ඕක ඉන්ට්‍රොඩියුස් කළා ටික දවසකට මිනිස්සු කෑ ගැහුවා නැවතුණා. Another criticism is that IMF programs are only designed to address poor governance, excessive government spending, and excessive government intervention in the market. Right? That is another criticism. World Bank. The World Bank is an international financial institution that provides loans to developed countries for capital. Then loans could have the monetary side, but World Bank loans, and they are giving loans for developing countries. They are giving loans only for developing countries. IMF they own developing countries for capital programs, like drinking water, right? Then what do you know? Road network, electricity network, improvement. Right? The World Bank comprises with two institutions. World Bank has two institutions. One is IBRD. The other one is IDA. IBRD is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. ඒක තමයි අපි කියන්නේ World Bank. මේක තමයි ගොඩක් කට්ටිය World Bank කියලා කියන්නේ මෙන්න මේකට. But really speaking, World Bank IBRD is only part of the World Bank. World Bank is the the main thing, right? IDA is International Development Association, right? The main देखा, World Bank. ये देखिए इसलिए तुम्हें World Bank के head. This was established in 1944, and the location is Washington, D.C., USA. I told you, right? Membership, 188 countries, IBRD, and 172 countries in IDA. History, the World Bank history, when we talk about the World Bank history, this was started in 1944, and from 1944 to 1968, reconstruction and development loans were provided by World Bank were relatively small. Right? Even though this is one of their main targets, main objectives, but the amounts are very small. Right? From 1968 to 1980, the size and number of loans were greatly increased. The loans values as well as the volumes, it went up. Right? Give me 2 minutes to. I'm free. They changed my room, and then now I'm freezing here. Nobody's here. And I put that away with me AC here right now. Rules in the back. Right. Then 1980 to 1989, the bank emphasized lending to service third world debts. Right? If there's any third world debts, the World Bank emphasized lending to service these third world debts. Right? From 1989 to present, the bank started lending to environmental groups and NGOs, which prompted criticism. This is important. All these organizations, even though they are world organizations, right? Don't take me wrong, because we have to critically analyze these organizations. We have to critically analyze, right? Then only you can understand what is happening. Even though these two organizations are world organizations, they are domiciled in America, Washington, D.C., capital. And surely the Americans are behind this organization. Right? Surely these people are behind these organizations. Right? And they started giving loans and lending to environmental groups and NGOs. Environmental groups and NGOs between, after 1989. Now, if you go back to the history of Sri Lanka, we had a civil war or internal war with LTT for many years. Yes, right? And this was one of the criticism uh, by the Sri Lankan government and everybody. These terrorists were funded through NGO money. The terrorists were funded through NGO money. This is the path where they got the money. This is the path where they got the money. Right? So for certain, if you put up a project report and do something, then they will say, okay, certain NGOs, they said, we want to put up the road network for North and East people. They are suffering because of the war. Right? So these people pass the money. And more 90% of the money will be siphoned to LTT. Will be siphoned to LTT. This is what had happened. Right? And this is what had created a lot of criticism. Okay. IMF and World Bank, if you do a comparison of IMF and World Bank, the purpose of IMF loans are, IMF is a monetary institution, whereas the IBRD or the World Bank is a development institution. Right? Activities, stabilizing international monetary system and financing of temporary balance of payment deficits. Financing of temporary balancing financing of temporary balance of payment deficits. Right? And number two, IBRD number two, promoting economic growth and development in developing countries. Promoting economic growth and development in developing countries. Thank you. This was freezing.
Environment supply chain management. මේක තුනට දෙවිච්ච එක දෙකට ඇවිල්ලා දෙකට දෙවිච්ච තුනට ඇවිල්ලා සෙව්වා කොයි විදිහට හරි විදිහ කියලා. මේ විදිහ හොඳයිද අර විදිහට?
මේ මොකද මේ?
සසය ඔබ රිවයිස් කරපු සිලබස් එක.
මම ඒක වෙනස් කළා. මම මේක තමයි වෙනස් කළේ. You know. Right. Okay. Thank you. Number three, source of funds. The IMF will get the money from official reserves and countries' currencies and special drawing rights. IBRD, World Bank, will get money from capital quotas and issues in international bond market. Eligible borrowers for IMF, all members, they can do 180 odd members, they can borrow. But IBRD, World Bank, they will give loans only to developing countries, not the developed nations. Now, even IMF will give money to China uh, China or America to adjust their balance of payment deficits, right? But World Bank, when they give loans, they give only for developing countries, not for developed countries. And IMF loans are basically short term. Basically short term. It's about 3 to 5 years. IMF loans 3 to 5 years. Again, after that, make IMF හැම බජට් එකේම IMF loans ගහනවා. බජට් එක balance කරන්න. ඊට පස්සේ we'll have to service them. We'll have to service them. Right? Then IBRD loans, World Bank loans are long term. Right? The credit horizon, IMF loans are 3 to 5 year loans. 3 to 5 year loans. Maximum 10 years. 3 to 5 year loans. Maximum 10 years. Right? IBRD loans are 15 to 20 years, the long term, and maximum 50 years. Maximum 50 years. Right? Okay. Eti ko gana තේරෙනවද? මේ comparison බලුවාම basically it's a IMF is a monetary institution, IBRD is a development institution. Right? IMF loans can be taken by all members, 188 members. IBRD, when they give loans, they will give only for export. They will give loans only for developing countries. Developing countries. Right? Then IMF loans are short term, whereas World Bank loans are long term. Sometimes it can go up to 50 years. Right? Okay. Then another organization called IFC, International Finance Corporation, IFC. This is also affiliated to the World Bank, IBRD, IFC. Right? IFC is the funding arm. It's a funding arm of World Bank to help the private sector. To help the private sector. Right? IBRD, IBA. The other one is IFC, International Finance Corporation. Right? This was established in 1956 to promote private capital flows to developing countries. To promote private capital flows. Right? And they invest directly in private companies. They provide loans or guarantees to private investors, and IFC borrows from IBRD. Very important etiquette. Then I can't remember when I was at Standard Chartered. Right? We issue our shares. Share issue a lot of people started buying. Some were very cautious because it's a new bank entering into the market. Don't know whether they will survive or not. Those things are there. Right? So people were a little bit reluctant to invest. So meanwhile, IFC came to us. One day IFC came to us and they said, okay, we will invest on it in your bank. We will invest. Right? and they bought 10% shares. They bought 10% shares. The moment the IFC invested in us, everybody wants to buy shares of Cargill Bank. The reason was the reason. What was the reason why everybody wants to invest in Cargill? Ken? Because they knew IFC will never invest in a private company unless otherwise they have solid grounds. Unless otherwise they have solid grounds. So it is easy to follow IFC. Right? I think ඒක තමයි උනේ. ඊට පස්සේ අපි බකෝ අපිට ඕනේ නැහැ කියලා එතකොට and our request for subscriptions, right? Within no time, we got the money. The reason behind was IFC was holding about 10% shares of Cargill Bank. Birthday spread to na tak at the IFC, before they invested, they wanted to know who is going to handle this money. So we, the senior of managers like AGMs and DGMs, were questioned heavily by IFC. Ape qualifications parala, may going to put on the make a right? Once they were happy, satisfied, they invested, right? So when we told them, okay, now we have so many local guys who want to invest, even the government organizations like Central Bank and all, IFC, right? No problem. You better give our shares to those people, right? You better give our shares to those people, and then they quit. Then government organization had IFC IFC right? Then we had to talk to either invest in a country, we had to talk to them, right? And to inform them about this is what has happened, right? It was IFC. After that, they invested this money with Cargill's food city chain. All are private institutions, private companies, right? So they are promoting private capital flows to developing countries, right? The same way they have, I know they have funded some other banks also, right? So banks are private companies, so they funded, right? Then the other one, IDA, International Development Association, that's affiliated to IBRD, and it was established in 1960. They are specialized in loans to most needy countries at low or zero interest rates for terms longer than 50 years. Now, 0 to 50 years, then what? 0 to 50 years loans, then what? 0 to 50 years loans කවුද දුන්නේ? World Bank. Will bankers giving 0 to 50 years. Anything over 50 years, longer than 50 years, IDA gives. And in most cases, they don't charge the customer, right? Either low interest or zero interest, right? Then provide funding for infrastructure projects such as transportation and energy supplies, which do not make short-term commercial returns but are vital for development. Right? Okay. Then another organization, another organization, Bank for International Settlement, Bank for International Settlement, BIS. Who are the bankers banker in Sri Lanka? Who are the bankers banker in Sri Lanka? Gentlemen?
Central Bank?
Central Bank. Banker is Central Bank. And BIS is Central Bankers Central Bank. Now you know how powerful this institution. It is the Central Bankers Central Bank. Right? This was established in 1930, originally to coordinate payments of German war reparations among European central banks. BIS headquarters are in Basel, Switzerland. Basel, Switzerland. මොකද එතන ඔගන්ට මේ නම කිව්වම මතක් වෙන මොකද්ද? මොකද නම කිව්වම මතක් වෙන්නේ? Basel, Switzerland. මොකද? එකක් තමයි Basel Accord. Basel Accord. හැම බැංක් එකකින්ම දන්නවා Basel 1, 2, 3 කියලා Basel Accords වලින් තමයි සේරම බැංක්ස් මොනිටර් කරන්නේ. ඔක්කොම බැංක්ස් මොනිටර් කරන්නේ මෙන්න මේ Basel වලින් දෙන instructions වලින්. That means central bankers central bank. දැන් අපිට instructions දෙනවා central bank එකේ ඒ වගේ. Right? ඒක තමයි අපි කියන්නේ Basel 1, Basel 2, Basel 3 කියලා අපි කියන්නේ instructions. Right? Basel 1, 2, 3 කියලා අපි කියන්නේ Basel වලින් දෙන instructions. Capital adequacy ඒ වගේ හැමදේම control කරන්නේ ඒගොල්ලෝ. It is managed by 20 board members representing the G20 countries. G20 countries can have powerful countries. Right? In 1988, minimum capital adequacy standard for banks, the bank, Basel Accord, minimum capital adequacy standard for banks. Again, me langadi dang banks or mecha line within 3 years mecha 5 years mecha ogulu me ganta gain on emanattan either you have to close down your business or you have to merge with some other bank. You have to merge with some other bank, or you have to get down some investments, right? Some other banks or the investments gain down Basel Accord ekකට minimum capital adequacy එක අපිට තියාගන්න ඕනෙන්ද. Then increasing confidence in the international banking system and setting common competitive conditions for international banks. Common competitive conditions for international banks. It's a level playing field here. Level playing field here. Then in 1995, new prudential standards were introduced to constrain the market risk of Basel II. Basel II. In 1999, revise and refine yardsticks for assessment of banks, lending and liquidity. Right? ඊට පස්සේ ආවේ නැහැ. ඔය ඔක්කොම අපි අපිට අපේ මේ අන්තිම එක එන්දලා අපේ second එක first එක ආවේ 2007 විතර. Basel 1 and Basel 2 right? ඒ වගේ ටික develop වෙලා එන්නේ. Then the last one which I want to discuss is another organization, Asian Development Bank, ADB. ADB was established in 1966. ADB was established in 1966 and the headquarters were in Manila, Philippines. ADB has 67 members. 67 members, India. Right? Makes loans and equity investments for economic and social development of members country. ADB loans and godak apita hambeno. ADB loans අපි දන්නා ගොඩක් හම්බෙනවා. Few years back, ADB gave some facilities to banks to give it to the customers, banks customers. They said, okay, to support the electricity problem in Sri Lanka, they advocate to go towards solar power, Since again, solar power, if you want to get loans, they gave a very low interest loans for solar power projects, right? Individually as corporate. A lot of people started thinking, okay, that's good for the solar power, but the only thing is we don't have money to buy. So the banks are ready to give the money backed by this ADB loan. Right? They think the international trade rate balapana. So when more and more people are for this solar, right? Now they have to import the certain raw materials, right? Panels same again, China wala again ratole. Think international trade international trade lending activities focus on energy projects, transportation, agriculture and industry areas. Right? Asian governments are the biggest borrowers. Okay. I think that's enough. We have discussed so many organizations who are supporting the international trade operations in the world. Right? The Meva, when you come the World Bank, IMF loan selling, loan selling, අපි ගන්නවා අපි රටවලට වාසියක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. නෑ වාසියක් වෙනවා. But only thing is you have to control it. You have to monitor it, right? And ADB loans and all are, even though they are small loans, but the impact is very much. Right? Okay. Any questions on these organizations? Any questions? Any questions? Yeah. I asked you guys the other day, today, I think today is the best day for that. අපේ කට්ටියක් ඉන්නවනේ මට කියන්න බලන්න මේ ඔගොල්ලෝ URR 725 කළාද? URR 725 කළාද? නැත්නම් කියන්න තුමට ලෑස්ති වෙන්න ඕන. නේ? මොනවාද? මාෂා නවලුතින් ජොයින් වෙනවා කිව්වේ. අනිත් ළමයි සමන්ත වීරසිංහ යසන්ති please tell me. ඔගොල්ලෝ facility සම් කරාද ඇති වෙනකන්? මුකුත් වචන කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ ඔය ළමයි. ඉතින් මම කොහොමද දන්නේ මොනවද ඔයගොල්ලෝ කරන්නේ කියලා? right. URC 522. URC 522 cover කරන්න මොකද්ද? what payment method? what payment method? what payment method? අනේ ළමයි URC 522 cover ගන්න මොන payment method එකද? ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ කටවල now I'll have to ask the questions by reading the names. Diranja, what is it?
Documentary collection.
Documentary collection. Eka hari. Documentary collection. Right? Meka kawa gane documentary collection. Documentary collection ogula kalada. Documentary collection kalada. Karena නැති නේ මේ කළා විතර නෑ questions to discuss කළා කියලා කියනවා. මිස්ටර් බර්නාඩ් මට ලියලා තියෙනවා questions 100ක් discuss කළා කියලා. තියෙනවද? 100ක් discuss කළා දෙනවද? හරි. හරි. එවනම් මම මේ discuss කරන ඒවා questions ටට්ටක් ගාලා කරන්න. Right. Uniform rules for collection is for collection operations, right? It is a set of uniform rules governing the operations of the collection, right? It contains 26 articles. Also known as URC 522. These are the uniform rules for collection, right? You can subcategorize under general provisions and definitions, forms and structure of collections, form of presentation. Unlike in UCP 600, make a very pivotal thing. UCP ke ekonai me ekonai hoyanna. Right? Make a purona bata kiyanna banna. I'll give you exactly 1 minute, not more than that. but I am going to call your names. මට මේක ඕන බලන්න ඔයගොල්ලෝ මොනවද කතා කළේ ඩිස්කස් කරේ ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ knowledge එක බලා ගන්න. Parties involved in document collection. Further parties. Exporter within brackets මොකක්ද දෙන්නේ? මොකක්ද දෙන්නේ? මොකක්ද දෙන්නේ? ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඉගෙන ගත්තා ඒක නේද? මොකද්ද? What is another name for exporter? It's another name for exporter.
Pay.
Yeah. Huh?
Pay.
No. Exporter කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Right? Yani? What is your ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ knowledge එක හොඳටම මදි. my class එකේ ළමයිකින් එල්ල අහන්නකෝ. තමයි මේවා පොරකක්කා කියන්නේ. Sunali, Samantha?
Principal,
Principal. Principal. Who is that? What's your name?
Sonali sir.
Sunali. Okay. So you waited all this time till I call your name. That's bad. What's the bank? What is your bank?
HNB.
HNB, come on. HNB guys are very straightforward. Buy na. You get up by na. Kiana tagala, right? Okay. Then which bank? Starting with R. Which bank? Starting with R. Me podium ta karne ho karane.
Remitting bank.
Remitting bank. Then
Collecting bank.
collecting bank and
Drawee.
draw V. Very good. Draw V. Right? Okay. Can you differentiate between clean collection and documentary collection? Can you differentiate between clean collection and documentary collection? මම මේකේ දීලා තියෙන questions ගොඩක් ඒවා මම හදලා දීපුවා මම හදලා ළමයින්ට ඉගෙනුවා 2012 13 වල ඉඳන් එදා ඉඳන් ගොඩක් ඒවා මේවා අරන් තියෙනවා ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ papers වලට. my questions same ඒවා ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා papers වලට. right? ඒකින්ද පොඩ්ඩක් ඕගොල්ලෝ උනන්දුවෙන් වැඩ කරන්න. Can you differentiate between clean collection and documentary collection? What do you mean by clean collection? What do you mean by clean collection? Article 2, Article 2, Article 2C, Article 2C. Article 2C and 2D. 2C and 2D. Right? Article 2C says, wait, I'm bring my spectacles. Article 2C says, clean collection means collection of financial documents only, not accompanied by commercial documents. Right? Financial documents with the right, and not accompanied by commercial documents. That means invoice, packing list, Eva, ne. BL, Eva gets the ne. TNA, draft again with the right, accompanied by financial document, drafting with the right. Okay. Documentary collection. Documentary collection means collection of financial documents accompanied by clean financial documents accompanied by commercial documents. Right? Then commercial documents not accompanied by financial documents. Both can happen. 2C and 2D. 2C and 2D. Right? Read this question and now give me the answer. Read this question and give me the answer. You received an import DP bill for US dollars 50,000. Your customer XYZ company limited informs you that they have cash flow problem and would like to pay US dollars 25,000 first, and the balance will be paid after after the goods have been sold. Right? What is your position under URC 522? What is your position under URC 522? And what would be your advice in this case? Answer. One of your good customers, they says, there's an import bill. How much? US dollars 50,000. The customer says, even though we have a bill of for 50,000, they have to come and pay this one, otherwise they can't get the documents. Right? The customer, they have a cash flow problem, and because of that, they will pay advance payment. They will pay 25,000. US dollars 25,000. And the balance they will pay once they sold the goods. Once they sold the goods, they will pay. Right? What is your position under URC 522? What is your position under URC 522? What is the relevant article? What is the relevant article? What is the relevant article? Yo. can we release, can we take $25,000 and then release the full bill? Can we do that? මොනවද කරන්නේ? අපි දන්නවද මට 25 ගෙවලා අරන් යන්නේ කියලා? නෑ. The instruction we got is to give the documents to the customer, but they have to pay first. Then only we'll give the document. Right? මොකද කරන්නේ? අපිට කරන්න බෑ. එහෙම සාරි ටිකක් කරන්න බෑ. ඒකෙන්ද අපිට වෙනවා what is your position under URC 522? ඒක කොහෙද කියලා තියෙන්නේ? Article 19B. Article 19B. Article 19B very clearly says, පෙරලා ගන්න බෑ Article 19. Okay. ඔයගොල්ලෝ ආන්සර් කරන්න දෙක මට පුදුමයි. I have doubts regarding your knowledge. Article 19B says, in respect of documentary collections, partial payments will only be accepted if specifically authorized in the collection instructions. Right? However, unless otherwise instructed, the presenting bank will release the documents to the drawee only after full payment has been received. And the presenting bank will not be responsible for any consequences arising out of any delay in the delivery of the documents. මේ 25 කරගෙන දෙන්න බෑ. ඔක්කොම දෙන්න ඕන. ඔක්කොම දෙන්න නම් අපිට මොනවද? What would be your advice in this case? මොකද්ද? knowledge එක නම් මදි පුතා මේ question එක බලන්න past papers වල අඩුම ගානේ past papers 5කවත් තියෙනවා. ඔයගොල්ලෝ past papers 10ක් ගත්තොත් 10න් 5කවත් තියෙනවා මේ question එක. එහෙමම මේ question එක එහෙමම තියෙනවා. ඒතර මොනවද ඔයගොල්ලෝ කරලා දෙන්නේ? Right? So as per the Article 19B, we can't release the documents. We can't release the documents without paying the full amount. Now, without paying the full amount, the customer is having a problem. How can he pay the full amount? Because he doesn't have money. So what is the remedial action he has? He can come to the bank and ask for a facility. Ask for a facility. ඉතින් මේ facility එක දෙන්න බැංක් එකේ කැමති නම් අපිට document එක release කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ facility එක දෙන්න කැමති නම් document එක release කරන්න පුළුවන්. Otherwise, it is difficult. Right? So the answer should be under URC 522, yes, Article 19B, Article 19B. Right? Then the second part, what would be your advice in this case? Sorry, first they have to settle, then only we can pay the bill. Right? First they settle. Case study 2. කියවන්න බං. උදේට කියවන්න. කියවන්න. Now what is the answer? Collection instruction states that interest is to be collected at 15% per annum, 360 days basis in respect of any delay in payment after first presentation. මේකත් තියෙනවා 2012 වල ඉඳන් ගත්තොත් questions හතරක් හෝ පහක් තියෙනවා. Same question. Same question. Right? 4 weeks after the first presentation, drawee offers the principal amount and refuses to pay any interest. Collecting bank remits principal amount, less charges only. Remitting bank replies demanding that the interest is also remitted. Is remitting bank correct to claim interest? What they got any? Is the remitting bank correct to claim interest? Yes or no? Is the remitting bank correct to claim interest? What is the article regarding this one issue? What is the article regarding this issue? I mean, we're going to discuss like what may VRC, but Burgiana then Mandaka by other Mang in this Balagana, Mr. Bernard Gay, Alinkaru area scale Balagana. Right? What is the case article? What is the article? Sunali, can you tell me? What is the article? Marsha? Don't tell me that you have just joined.
So is it Article 20C?
Yeah, first you have to start the question answer with Article 20. You are very good. I'll give a clap, right? You have to start the article with Article 20A. What is Article 20A says? Article 20A says is, okay, the guys, the remitting bank can request you to collect interest, right? If the guy has not paid, if the drawee has not paid, then we don't have any responsibility. Right? We have the right to release the documents to them without collecting the charges. This is what had happened. Right? This is what had happened. Again, is remitting bank correct to claim interest? No. What does URC 522 say on that matter? Right? You have to quote Article 20A and then answer the question accordingly. Article 20A. If the collection instruction specifies that interest is to be collected and the drawee refuses to pay such interest, the presenting bank may deliver the documents against payment or acceptance or on other terms and conditions, as the case may be, without collecting such interest. Without collecting such interest. Right? Article 20C is a different thing. If you answer the question with Article 20C, then it is wrong. You will get 0 marks. 20C. 20C says if the interest cannot be waived, then you can't release the documents. That is what Article 20C says. Or 20A says, if they say interest cannot be waived, right? It's an optional thing. Right? It's an optional thing. Right? Okay. Now I want you to, and then I will make a paper. Now we don't have time also. But I want you people to do this case study 3 to 6. 3 to 6 next day. Next day I'm going to discuss 3 to 6. Right? After doing one of the key areas, පාඩම් ටික කරලා අපි daily make a question කරන්න මේ questions එක එක answer කරන්න බලමු, but you have to do it. You have to do it, and when you are coming to the class, I need only the answer. Right? Okay. Then see you next week. Any questions? Any questions? Ken? Other questions still? Right. In that case, we'll meet next week. Homework there. Okay. Thank you. හැබැයි ඔයගොල්ලෝ කතා කරන්නේ නැත්නම් මට පාඩම් කරන්න එපා වෙනවා. පාඩම් කරන්න. දුදුවන් තරම් ළමයි කතා කරන්න ඕන. ආන්සර් කරන්න ඕන. ආන්සර් කරන්න නම් ඔයගොල්ලෝ රෙඩි පිට එන්න ඕන ක්ලාස් එකට. Right. Okay. නැත්නම් මේ online classes කම්මැලි.